everybody, and welcome to Culture in Maine. As always, I'm Carla Christopher, and I'm here this week to celebrate with you one of York's most important cultural phenomenons, the cigar box guitar. We have great cigar box musicians, a cigar-themed open mic every Wednesday night hosted by Shane Speal, the king of the cigar box guitar, at the First Capital Dispensing Company. But once a year, the Cigar Box Guitar Festival takes over the parking lot of the York Emporium, and you get literally dozens of the best bands, authors, builders, and all-around aficionados of the cigar box guitar phenomenon that, yes, is a craze that is completely sweeping the country. Now, my first guest tonight is David Sutton, who is an author of one of the definitive textbooks on the lifestyle behind the cigar box guitar. He also has another great new book coming out that we'll learn all about tonight. And then stay tuned, because we have tons more authors, jam sessions, signings, trivia, and footage of the one and only Cigar Box Guitar Festival. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the music. Thanks for joining us, and as always, I'm really glad you're here with me on the corner of Culture in Maine. Here I am with David Sutton, the author of Cigar Box Guitars, the ultimate DIY guide for makers and players of the handmade music revolution. I know it's super exciting. It's tense. It's the seriousness of cigar box guitar. It is not just a hobby anymore. It's a lifestyle choice and a musical revolution.
It's crossed over into hyperbole. That's what I've just done.
All right, so tell me how you got involved in the cigar box guitar movement. It's not really something that people just sort of stumble on or wake up in the morning and say, I want to build and know and play cigar box guitars.
I just sort of stumbled on it. No. I have a daughter, and a number of years ago when she was 5 or 6, she's very musical. She sings beautifully. She took an interest in my guitars, and I wanted to just turn her loose with them, but at the same time I was protective of them. And so I was always hovering and worried that they were going to get dinged. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if Alicia had a guitar that she could do whatever she wanted with? And I had this recollection of a concept of a cigar box guitar, something my dad maybe mentioned when I was little. And so I went looking on the internet, which is where we find everything, for information about cigar box guitars. And I was thinking I'd find plans for I'm thinking cardboard box, rubber bands, basically an enhanced toy. But I found at that time, and this is going back a few years, just one website that had instructions for building a guitar using a wooden box and a stick that goes all the way through the box and some real guitar strings and tuners. And the claim that this could actually be played and make real music. So I built...
Vicious lie. No.
Yeah, I couldn't build just one. I built two of them side by side because I wanted one too. And
all the best toys.
Yeah, gave one to her and kept one for myself. And once you build one, it's kind of infectious. I think I could have done that better. I could do this differently. So I built another and actually put a pickup in that one because I'd found a reference where for a couple of dollars you could actually have an electric cigar box guitar.
Right.
That was hilarious. Then I built another one.
Electric cigar box guitar. The ultimate homemade instrument, now plugged in and fully amped.
That's right, going through your effects pedals and everything else. So I built 5, and then I just took I had thought, wouldn't it be cool, since I am a photographer first and foremost, to put together a blog and show people how to do this. But then I thought, who would look? Who would find this? It would be so obscure. Nobody cares about this.
Yeah.
And I just sort of set the idea aside for a number of years. And then one day I was flipping through a book called The Little Book of Whittling. And it's published by Fox Chapel Publishing, right here in East Petersburg. And there was a note on the copyright page that said, hey, if you've got an idea for a book, let us know. We do books about woodworking. So I sent him a letter with links to some samples of my writing I had done for my photography business and some pictures of the guitars I built. And I got a phone call the next day.
The time has to be right.
That's
Why
right.
in our
That's
super
right.
progressive, internet-dominated time was the environment perfect for a homemade DIY musical instrument?
Well, I connect it to two things, and this is based not on any extensive research, but on my hunches mostly, and just my experience meeting people and talking to them. One, the economy tanked in 2008, and I have the idea that maybe people had been saving for years, thinking about that Taylor or that Martin, and suddenly that was not going to happen.
Right.
And they set those dreams aside. But I think that there was a shift in this country away from, I hope there was, away from this consumer mindset where anything you use in your life has to be manufactured by experts somewhere else, instead of going back not even 100 years to everything that you used and everything that you consumed came from, within a few square miles of where you lived. And if you wanted a musical instrument, you built one, and nobody cared that it wasn't perfect. And music wasn't something that you necessarily that was only recorded and only perfect and only performed by performers, but it was something people just did sitting around together. So I have the feeling that there was a shift away from that. The other factor, I think, is I'm at the very tail end of the baby boom, and I'm 55, so we've got a lot of baby boomers who I think looking at themselves in the mirror and getting a wake-up call and thinking, all my life I've been thinking that someday I was going to rock and roll,
They were just waiting for to be the next Rolling Stone.
And
they knew it was coming.
That's right. If not now, when?
So now tell me about the new book that you have coming out, An Obsession with Cigar Box Guitar.
Could you mean this book, Carla?
I could mean that book. This gorgeous, fabulous book, An Obsession with Cigar Box Guitars. 120 great hand-built examples. 120 is a lot of different ways to build a guitar from a box and a stick.
Well, whereas the first book had, as I described, those three major components, this one really is an album. It's a photo gallery, lots of pictures of different guitars, both modern guitars, and every couple of pages they have one of these wonderful vintage spotlights where they're featuring an antique cigar box instrument here, a single string fiddle. There was, shall we say, a fair amount of overflow when we finished this book. Now, another beautiful thing about this is Fox Chapel has gone to great lengths to bring us a limited edition of this book. This is crazy. Yeah, there are only 500 of these being printed and bound. The publisher, John Ocavo, and I, David Sutton, have both autographed each of these 500 copies. These are not out yet. Both of these books actually will be out in October. But this, we're thinking, is going to be a big hit, a collector's item. And it's already sounded to us like it's very much in demand. It's essentially, the content is exactly the same as this, but it'll be hardbound in this faux leather embossed.
And autographed.
And
so now,
each copy will be autographed.
Where can my desperately obsessed audience members go to procure these amazing books?
I suggest
and to find you.
I suggest you hit your local independently owned bookstores, like the York Emporium, like Xanadu Books in Memphis, and like what's another one I would think of? Of course, they'll be available on Amazon, but I like whenever possible to plug the little guy. They're struggling.
And Jim Lewin and the York Emporium will absolutely be carrying copies of the book.
Absolutely. Cigar Box Nation has over 10,000 members, and they are worldwide. So there are people building cigar box guitars all around the world. That's a very good place to start. And Cigar Box Nation is run by my friend Ben Baker, who has a cigar box guitar supply house called CB Gitty. cbgitty.com. You can go there. He's also that's a great place to buy my books, and Mike's book, and I think Bill's book as well. And it's a good starting place for buying parts if you can't find used parts. He's got all kinds of things, and in fact, I think that he also sells kits at this point. He has cigar box amplifiers, kits for building cigar box amplifiers, everything you could possibly want. Those two sites, and then just start Googling around. But Cigar Box Nation, CD Gitty will really get you going. Actually, Bill Jehle, who wrote One Man's Trash, also, if you were to go to eBay and type in Bill Jehle, that's Jehle, he has a number of instructional DVDs that he sells, I think almost exclusively on eBay, although I think he also has a website which is bellyjellymusic.com. I hope I'm getting this right.
Cool.
And he'll walk you through building cigar box guitars too. What you don't find is stinginess. You won't find people who are guarding their secrets. This community is amazing in terms of its generosity and its willingness to embrace beginners.
Joining me now is Justin Johnson. Now, Justin is a virtuoso of the cigar box guitar. So, Justin, the instruments that you brought today are absolutely gorgeous. But why specialize in working with roots instruments, as you call them, rather than working with the traditional instruments? I mean, you certainly have the skill set that you could play pretty much anything.
Well, you know, I started with traditional instruments, with guitar, the 6-string guitar, the acoustic and the electric, and you know, a lot of my heroes, blues, both in blues, folk, jazz, all the different genres that I like, generally they're recorded on those instruments. You don't find a lot of these homemade instruments in classic recordings from even a lot of the musicians that started out on these instruments.
That's true.
And,
once they could upgrade to something more expensive and shop bought, they did.
Exactly. And you know, some of that has to do, and I feel like a lot of it has to do with the to that was available at the time, with the recording techniques. You needed more volume. You needed to really have the loudest instrument you could find, and these, unless you plug them in like this one is, you know, they don't have as much volume as a large guitar. But when I first picked up a cigar box guitar a few years back, I immediately felt the difference and at first it was a difference in the way that it felt and just the way that it inspired the music that was coming out of it. It just inspires, you hit it the same way you might hit a traditional guitar, and it goes left or right, you know, and instead of left, and
you just have to learn how to flow with it.
Exactly, and it inspires a different way of thinking about it. And then when I got into the history of it and where these instruments actually came from and the role that these instruments played in the music that I loved, I realized there is a deeper soul in these instruments beyond even the musical, even what you hear from them. It's what you feel from them and what comes out of them, that it really strikes a chord, no pun intended, and really resonates, in a different way with you spiritually when you play them. And it's almost like you're in a time machine and you're going back to a time when blues music wasn't even a genre yet, when people were writing it, and when
it was still a form of raw expression,
exactly,
rather than something that people were producing because there was an established format for it.
Exactly, and you once you play a 3-string, a 2-string, a 1-string instrument, you realize that you're breaking it down almost to a single voice and a much simpler form of expression. So for one, you have to learn to try harder to get the notes out, and you become a better musician because of it. Also, you end up having to play the slide because your intonation a lot of times might not be. And intonation is how the frets are lined up. Sometimes with these instruments, you don't even have frets to... Those are already tuned for you, so you can just press them down with the slide. So you have to really get that soul out of it without it doing all the work for you, if you know what I mean. And so it makes you a more versatile musician. It makes you come up with more vocal lines. So instead of, and you can have that vibrato in there and really express it in a different way.
Well, will you play a little something for us?
I'd love to.
So we can hear what the emotion, how you coax it out of that little box thing.
And I'll play something that just makes something up, I guess, and sort of the style of some of those early Delta blues players that I really enjoy listening to. And a lot of those players, when they got 6-stringed instruments, they were still playing the vocabulary that they learned on the cigar box guitar and on the 1-string diddly bow. So.
So the blues were attractive to you first before you started actually creating the music on this.
Definitely. I think one of the first times I ever heard, well, I was going to say a blues song, but a song in general that really just woke me up and sort of grabbed me and made me think about music in a different way was a Lightning Hopkins song called Last Night. And
interesting.
Lightning Hopkins, he's a Texas blues musician. He's from Texas, and he has a very distinct sound. That he's one of those musicians that sounds the same whether you put him with a band, whether he's playing solo, whether he's playing electric, acoustic. He had a 60-year career. He sounded as good and the same style at the end of his career as at the beginning of his career. It was like you're just listening to him when you're listening to him play and sing, and there's just an honesty in that, and that really struck me with that song. And he's always been one of my favorite guitar players and singers, and it's that honesty, though. It's not better. He's not a better guitar player than a lot of guitar players. He's not a better singer than a lot of singers, but he's as honest a musician as you can find, I think. And that's what I strive to be. And a lot of people are concerned with how fast you play and how your technique is, who your influences are, but I think at the end of the day, it's who you are and how honest you're being with yourself, and that goes for musicians and any kind of artist, really. I think that holds true too. So I started with blues when I got into guitar. I loved music in general, and from blues it took me all over to all kinds of different genres. The guitar got me interested in, I love this guitar player, let me learn this genre. But then it would all come back to blues, and so even with these instruments too, it all seems to come back to that root, And
so do you think that the heart of the cigar box guitar is really in the blues, even if you can use it to play rock and roll?
Well, I think that the heart of the cigar box guitars is even deeper than the blues, and I think the blues, to me, like I was saying, is an honest. It's the honesty that shines through to me with blues, but with roots instruments and cigar box guitars, diddley bows, whether it's made out of a cigar box or a coconut or a gourd or a turtle shell or anything. The concept, I believe, is that anyone can make music, and it doesn't have to be a genre. It doesn't have to be a standardized tonal system. It doesn't have to be guitar strings. It can be weed whacker strings. It can be fishing line. It can be anything, but there's music in it. You can slap some of these books together and it would probably have a tone, and fan the pages, it would have a different tone. You could probably get a lot of good percussion players to make music out of anything lying around. And stringed instruments for me that's my favorite type of instrument. I love instruments with strings, and I just seem to have a different connection with those than I love other instruments. I started on the trumpet, but
the trumpet.
My grandpa was taught trumpet his whole life, and I played the trumpet and baritone before I played guitar. But when I picked up a stringed instrument, there was just no going back. But I think there's that drive in the human nature to create art and to create music, and if you don't have anything to play, you'll sing it, and if you can't sing, you'll sing badly and enjoy it, and and if you have something to strum on, you'll strum on it. So I think that's what it represents to me. It's just that form of expression.
Well, Justin, that's awesome, and I can't wait to hear more of you later tonight, but would you take us out with just a little bit more?
Sure. This guitar was built by my buddy Richard Brantley, and again, this represents that same sort of very simplified style. It's just some a neck through body with the wood, a cigar box, and this vegetable can lid right here, which is a great resonator. And then this guitar here is a little more sophisticated, but really it's this is made out of a silverware box. Used to hold silver, and a wooden water ski. So the neck is actually an old mahogany water ski, and you can see where that ski was bending right here.
Yeah.
He turned that into the headstock, and it just goes to show you how much tone.
Wow. From a water ski.
Yeah, out of something that you found at a thrift shop, and people had been skiing on and storing their silverware in it until it became a musical instrument. But I'll play you a little. Again, I'll just make something up for you, and. It's justinjohnsonlive.com, and I've got free downloads, music, tour schedule on there, and all kinds of good stuff. All the builders whose instruments I play on are on my gear page, so you can find out about any of them. And hope everyone does.
My next guest goes only by the name of One String Willie. But if you know anything about roots instruments, you've heard of him and the amazing feats he can accomplish in a ridiculously short amount of time. Okay, now that is a syrup bottle you are playing, correct?
Dark was the night and cold was the ground on which my Lord was laid. His blood like drops of sweat ran down, in agony he prayed. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world, troubles of the world, troubles of the world. Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world. I'm going home to live with God. No more weeping and a wailing.
went to blues church.
We did.
So now, what exactly is it that I am looking at here? Because to me, it looks like a paint can and a wooden board.
So the diddley bow is a traditional African American instrument from the rural South, and so if a young kid would not have enough money to buy an instrument, what he could do is take his mom's or his grandmother's broom. He could take the wire off of it that held the broom straws onto the broom handle. You get about 7 feet of wire from one of those. Okay, so then you nail 2 nails into the porch post of your house or into the side of the wall, and then stretch the broom wire between the 2 nails, and then you slip a little, like a couple of rocks or a couple of bricks or a jar and a block of wood underneath it, slide it towards the ends, towards the nails to tension it up, and then you can pluck it with your finger and then change the pitch with a glass bottle. You can't go to the music store and get intermediate diddley bow from LA. So essentially the question was, how many different kinds of sounds can you get from one string and let's say a bottle and a stick? Right. And then how can you incorporate those, integrate those into a piece of music? So it'd start, figuring out how to make sounds, and then I would have like traditional songs that, then I would try to apply that to it. So it kept going back and forth to build up technique. And so then as the technique grew, then I started to write songs just for the diddley bow. So then after that, then I just continued to work on technique. And so one of the things that I started out with was using a stick, which is what Eddie Jones used, and then a flat glass bottle. I don't think he used a syrup bottle. But I realized that if I had a pipe, then you could have widely spaced tones, sort of like Eddie Van Halen when he's doing. When he's doing the 2-finger pickings or 2-finger tapping, so or 2-hand tapping, where he's like touching the string, he's fretted the string down here, and then he plucks off of it, so you can get like a very rapid. So you can do that here. Like that. And so the Eddie Jones style with the stick, I call that old school, and this is sort of an advancement beyond that.
Progressive.
I guess so. So I was telling you before we started filming that. So this pickup is a piece of it's a sewing machine bobbin, and I wound some 42 gauge single build magnet wire onto the sewing machine bobbin, and then put a little rare earth magnet down through the center of it, and then that's wired into a guitar volume control. So the volume control is by far the most expensive part of this whole rig. So
not the baby food jar.
No. And then the Eddie Jones had a resonator made out of a paint can. So this is essentially a replica of his, and then it's been electrified. And the one thing that I doubt that he did was that when I play, when I build these, I normally try to put position marks on it, like the fret markers on a guitar. So you can. So the sound of the open string is very different than the sound of when you're doing a harmonic. So just the physics lesson here, that the open string is vibrating at a fundamental, but it's also vibrating at twice the fundamental frequency with a node in the center of the string. And so if you touch that node, you wipe out the fundamental, and now you're hearing the second harmonic, which is one octave higher than the fundamentals. Okay, so you can do that.
You just made me understand physics through a musical instrument.
Okay, you can. So now, what you can do is start moving that around.
That makes total sense when you explain it that way.
So, basically, so this.
That's how you were able to create so many different tones using the one string. You actually can be playing multiple notes with one string.
Right. So actually, there's one other thing that I forgot to mention to you. So this is a traditional African American instrument that is, just with people, with kids especially, that are, need to improvise their own instrument. And several famous guitarists have started out with the diddly bow. So Blind Willie Johnson may not be popular to the musical mainstream, but to any slide guitarist, everybody knows who Blind Willie Johnson is. And also one that more people have heard of is B.B. King, also started out on a diddly bow. The question was, so you have a beginner's instrument and you have almost 5 decades of guitar and 4 decades of slide guitar experience. What kind of music can you make on that instrument? So that was the musical challenge. So that, it was, what can you do with a beginner's instrument? How far can you take that? And I'm still actually exploring that, still teaching myself. And then, and basically, is there like a limit to what you can do?
Well, I see you brought some supplies.
Sure.
With us, with you today.
Okay, so I can build one of these in about 5 minutes, and so what I will not have at the end of this 5 minutes is the paint can resonator or the electromagnetic pickup, but I can shift the pickup over to this one.
It'll be the acoustic instrument.
Yeah, and we can hear what it sounds like because I'll shift the pickup over to it. The other thing I will probably not be able to do in the 5 minutes is make the fret markings, the position markers. That takes about another 5 minutes. So, but all of that information of how to do this is on my website. So,
what is your website?
It's www.onestringwillie.com. All one word. O-N-E
Perfect.
String Willie.
Perfect. Well, I'll get out of your way.
No, that's
so
okay.
you can do this.
Okay, so we start out with a 2x4. This is actually, I think this is a 36-inch 2x4. This is about the smallest size I really like. I like them even like up to 42 inches. So we have two 16-penny nails, and you drive the nails in about an inch or so away from the end, angling slightly towards the end. And you drive it all the way through because the nails are going to be under a fair amount of tension. Okay. So then you take some broom wire. So actual broom wire that comes off of a broom looks like this. It's kind of rusty. And so there, as I said, on a normal broom, on the old time brooms anyway, there was about 7 feet of broom wire on the broom, and so that would allow you to make 2 diddly bows. However, so to ensure domestic tranquility, I contacted a broom company, and I buy broom wire by the 16-pound coils. which is enough to make about 10,000 diddly bows. So what I do is I take the wire and I wind it 1.5 times around a 2x4 and then wind it around a CD container so that I have about a 24-foot coil of wire, and I sell those also through my website, so that anybody that wants to try this doesn't have to destroy a broom. So you take the wire, you wrap it around the nail, reach under the wire, wrap it around the nail again, reach under the wire, wrap it over the nail, wrap it over itself, and wrap it over itself again. So then you wrap it around the other nail, pull it fairly tight, reach under the wire, under the wire again, over itself, and over itself again. Okay, so now you take, these are, I think these are 10-penny finishing nails. So you go right next to the wire and the large nail, tie that in, and then drive it, bend it over. And that is going to prevent the wire from riding up on the nails. So then you take a little jelly jar or a baby food jar. In this case, it's a piece of PVC pipe, which I use especially when we're building with children, because if you use glass, when you tighten it up, there's always a chance of it breaking, which is not something that you want. So you slip it under the wire in the middle and roll it towards one of the nails. And you roll it as far as you can, and then make a little mark underneath it. So then you take a half-round rasp and you rasp a groove on the nail side of that mark. So now what will happen is that when you roll that in, it will click into place. So then you take a little block of wood, slip that under the wire, and hammer that towards the other nail. Okay, so here's how you can tell if this is tight enough. If it sounds like that, it's not tight enough. We're not making furniture here. If you want to make it a little brighter, you can slip a nail under here. That's it.
piece of milk.
That was amazing.
That's all there is to it.
is Mike Orr. Now, Mike Orr is just that kind of guy that you have to catch up with him, sitting out on the porch, having a down-home good time. And you can probably tell that by the title of his book. It's not the prim and proper way to create a fabulous cigar box guitar. It's the handmade music factory, the ultimate guide to making foot-stomping good instruments. Mike Orr, it is a pleasure, first of all. Thank you for coming and joining us on the show. Now that we're catching up on the porch, what is the secret that most people don't know about creating a foot-stomping good instrument, that they need this book as opposed to hopping on YouTube or just putting a stick through a box and doing their best to make music out of it?
Well, there's a lot of information out there on YouTube, but the book has everything, including the templates and the patterns to make a lot of the necks.
And gorgeous pictures, very thorough
step-by-step guide and history.
And we're talking like step 37, not steps 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
It's serious business.
It's detailed but very simple.
Kind of like cigar box guitar music.
Yeah.
So now, what makes it still challenging? I mean, like you said, it is a relatively simple instrument, and yet, does it keep challenging you? Do you keep learning new things?
Yeah, I keep trying to up it each time and build something nicer and more complex. Lately, I've been messing around with more complex electronics in the guitars.
Is that challenging to have to put this sophisticated and very modern wiring into cigar boxes and baby jars?
No, because a lot of times it's already all pre-figured out and wired, and we're taking apart something else. So we're just transplanting a lot of times electronics from one broken guitar.
So you recycle a lot of the musical parts and repurpose them.
Exactly.
Nice. So which do you love more? Which is more of your heart, the performing or the actual creation of the instruments? Which came first for you?
The creation of the instruments is still what I like to do. The biggest fun is plugging in something new when you finish, just to hear what's this one going to sound like, because they're always different.
Well, I put my soul in a wooden box, mailed it to the Pope. He sent it back with the postage due, said, son, you got no hope. It's a hard time living after all. It's a hard time living after all. Well, I put all my love in a diamond ring, asked you for your hand. You threw it in the gutter, said come back when you're a man. It's a
crux of this entire Cigar Box Extravaganza. One thing that keeps coming up is cigarboxnation.com. Now, it started off as a handful of cigar box aficionados who were just gathering on Yahoo. Remember Yahoo? Well, now it's a 6,000 plus member, mega massive website devoted to all things cigar box guitar. And even Shane Speal himself, Mr. King of the Cigar Box Guitar, says there's only one go-to guy when it comes to figuring out all the right parts, kits, and information to get your supplies to make your cigar box guitar dreams a reality. Was there anybody else that we could get? Welcome on the show.
Thank you.
CB Gitty Crafter Supply.
That's it.
Woo.
It's been 5 years since we sold our first set of fret wire on eBay, and got into it. It was actually Shane Speal starting Cigar Box Nation back in the end of 2008. And I happened to be searching on Google for anything related to cigar box guitars at the time because I had just discovered them. Like, these are great, and happened to find Cigar Box Nation and joined up, and it's been a heck of a ride since then. What got me into thinking about selling parts to other builders was looking at where you could get parts back at the end of 2008, early 2009. The big guitar supply houses. Everything was so expensive. I'm like, it can't cost this much. This can't be right. So I started finding, my own suppliers, places to get things in bulk, wholesale, and started selling to some other builders, and it has just grown and grown. Shane has been a big help. I carry some Shane Speal signature products now that he has endorsed or that he uses himself, and a couple of years ago, the ownership of Cigar Box Nation, Shane and he decided he didn't really want to run it anymore, so he could focus more on his own music and building. So I took on that, but with a goal of keeping it as close as possible to the roots of what it was founded on. And it's actually, we a couple months ago crossed the 10,000 member mark.
10,000
working on 11,000 at this point, so it's still going. In that spark of that I still see, that it happened to me when I first saw one of these things, and I still see it all the time. It's like, is that a toy? And then they hear it, and like, wow, and you built that? And then they're looking at it and thinking, I could build one of those, and that's where it starts.
I can do that.
That realization that anybody, pretty much anybody, can make an instrument and make music on it. Like the One String Willie bow you got there. It's a board with a couple of nails and a wire and a piece of pipe, and you can make music on it. That for me was the revolution right there, because I've studied guitar and all sorts of things, and had never thought about making one. Like, instruments are made by these people in these towers somewhere, and they hand them down to us. And just seeing what can be done with something like that, it's still. I still have that amazement of, my God, what are we doing? This is awesome.
Are they really making those sounds out of what used to be?
And being able to help so many builders get started, find parts at a good price. Could they come at me with the largely the same questions over, like, what strings do I need, or what should I do with this? And I never get tired of answering those questions, because that is what gets people started. Whether they just build them, or they build them and play them, or just play them, it's an amazing thing.
Now, do you have a music background? Did you come to this from a musical place, or just as a fan who fell in love with the building and construction and making of them?
It was more from the musical side. I've always loved handcraft, woodworking, all sorts of crazy hobbies like that. But I started with guitar when I was 12. I got a guitar for my birthday and started taking lessons, and came away from it for a long time, and then kind of got back into mandolin and bluegrass music, and then into Irish music, and I've been in an Irish band and picked up the banjo as well. But anyway, so good bit of music there, but it's a combination of something you're making yourself and the musical side. It's really taking music back to its most basic building blocks. A tight string stretched between 2 points that allow it to resonate and vibrate and make a sound. that is the root of, you know, $20,000 Martin guitars or $1 million violins or whatever. It all started with that, and that's what's cool.
So
I love
it. That is seriously cool. So what is it that these 10,000 people that come to Cigar Box Nation, what exactly is it that they're all doing? They're not all just there buying parts.
It's collective insanity, I think. It's Cigar Box Nation is not a store. Cigar Box Nation is a community. You know, there's forums dedicated to different questions that arise from Cigar Box Guitars 101. What do I do from the first time builder up through super advanced, people putting multiple pickups and all sorts of crazy stuff into things. And they're from all over the world. And, we have our occasional flare-ups. Like any community on the internet, sometimes people don't get along that well, but considering how many people use this site, they post their pictures, they upload their videos, their music clips they've recorded, they talk about their builds, they talk about their gigs, just everything. It's amazing. Considering we've got from crazy ex-punk rockers to, good born-again Christians that are, building these and playing I'll Fly Away on them, and everything in between, anarchists to pagans to, it's such a huge range of people from all over the world, and it's amazing how well everybody really does get together. So, in that side of it, it's probably the most sedate of any large internet community I've been on. So.
To get 10,000 people from all over the world
to mostly get along,
to have the
amazing.
same passion and be drawn to the same pure musicality of it.
Yeah,
that's
really what brings
incredible.
everybody together is that spark of.
I can make that, and I can play
what
that.
can be done with just such simple building blocks.
A string.
It still has
a string
me hooked.
between 2 points.
That's it. And where you can go from there.
It's a little hard to explain, but there's something very satisfying about playing a musical instrument, outdoors in the Alabama sunshine. And if you happen to have made that instrument with your own two hands, then I bet it's especially satisfying. That's a feeling that Alabama's Bill Jehle knows pretty well. But I've got to ask, what is that instrument you're holding there, Bill?
Without a doubt, the first time anyone hears one of these things for the first time, they can't believe that they're actually hearing a cigar box that's been made into the guitar.
Now, in another place and another time, these aging wooden boxes probably held Prince Alberts or Swishers or Havana Souls. Most of these boxes were tossed away just as soon as the last drag on the last stogie was blown into the air. And if it weren't for Bill, most of these boxes would have been relegated to a far more mundane life. But Bill has a way of finding art and inspiration in the most unlikely of places.
I'm always on the lookout for things that people have discarded, tiny objects in the parking lot and such, and it's always fun to take something that someone would overlook, like a piece of trash, and be able to think, I could use that to make something on the Cigar Box guitar.
From his Morgan County garage, under the close inspection of a few curious cats, Bill patiently crafts these old relics into cigar box guitars.
Every single one of the cigar box guitars is different, depending on how complex I want the build to be. The cigar box guitars definitely have a sound that's all their own. They sound very primitive, and they definitely don't sound like a guitar that you would buy and take off the wall. They all start off as just a simple piece of wood, and after this has had some shaping and some frets installed, then it'll become something more like this, like the finished product. When people get a chance to play these, they always comment on how comfortable the neck feels. And I attribute that to the fact that I actually sand the profile of the neck using my hand. Cigar box guitars, there are subtly no rules. You don't have to have frets. You don't have to have 6 strings. I don't even have to have a real piece of guitar hardware to use as a bridge. And all of those things combined together make this an extremely liberating project.
If you're like most folks, you probably haven't even heard of these folksy little music makers. Bill runs into that a lot as he travels about.
As a matter of fact, the place to get the biggest reaction out of anyone is to take one of these things through an airport and just carry it. Everyone will give you strange looks, but every once in a while someone will come up to you and say, "What the heck is that thing?" And then I'll play a little bit for them, and then they say, I love it. Where can I get one?"
You cannot do any kind of story or coverage or special about the Cigar Box Guitar Festival without talking to the Cigar Box Guitar Festival's organizer, the front man for the York Emporium, and the host for all the fun that we've been having all weekend, Jim Lewin. Now, I actually just learned the coolest piece of trivia about Jim Lewin. Not only does he run the neatest used bookstore and curiosity shop that anyone who's ever visited has ever come across, the official history of the Cigar Box Guitar that you have heard quoted multiple times by our authors today, One Man's Trash, A History of the Cigar Box Guitar by Bill Jehle, actually in its very first few lines quotes extensively of a well-known Civil War historian, J.G. Lewin, who writes in his book about a lot of the things that play into the Civil War origins of the Cigar Box Guitar. Well, guess who the author of Witness to the Civil War happens to be? our very own Jim Lewin. So there is a tie between you and Cigar Box guitar history and lore and literature.
In my professional writing life, my professional pen name is J.G. Lewin. And we published, Pam and I, 5 books. J.G. Lewin and P.J. Huff. Almost nobody knows that.
It's a secret. You, me, and the 80,000 viewers. That's all that's going to know. Ever.
I think the publishers still remember it, but I'm not sure. But what happened was Shane was a regular customer of the store, and I was just talking to him one day, and he said something about how he plays Cigar Box guitars.
Right.
And at that point, I was vaguely aware of it, but I had never heard the instrument, and I really didn't know that much about it. And he said, what do you think about having a festival, Cigar Box Guitar Festival?